From the marbled halls of power to the hardscrabble streets throughout America, I've been reporting for decades, cutting through the partisan fog to bring you the news that matters. I'm Tom LoBianco. Today on the show, SV Dáte, longtime White House correspondent for HuffPost, explains what is actually piping out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue right now. We go deep also on these Venezuelan boat strikes. Why is the president of the United States trying to provoke war with a Latin American nation? That and much more from Shirish Daté in a little bit. A reminder, if you're not signed up already, head on over to 24site.news. Make sure to get the newsletter every day. Tune in here every day at noon. Catch us. And then again for the encore at 8 p.m. on Political Voices Network. Quick news top, and then we're going to jump right in with Shirish. So SV Dáte is the byline. Shirish is his first name. Legendary byline, by the way, and I'm sure many of you guys probably heard him on NPR before. He's on NPR for many years. Real quick, not guilty plea from James Comey earlier today, according to the Associated Press. The FBI, the former FBI director, targeted seemingly politically by everything the president of the United States has said that he wants to see this thing go to trial now. Now, I would note this could potentially undo quite a bit of what the Trump White House has been seeking in terms of its political retribution. All right, its attack tour. All right, and I would note too that it's only retribution and revenge in their spin on this, because if in many cases these are attacks. Okay. Barbara Quaid, former federal prosecutor online, social media, whatnot, X, you name it, has talked about this a good bit, that even though it appears that this hastily put together political charge of lying to Congress against Comey would easily be tossed out, and certainly Comey's legal team hopes for that, and expects that would happen. It might be more beneficial to actually see this through, to show that the emperor really does have no clothes. Let's see. We're going to find out. We're going to find out more about that. Very interesting story from my friend Pablo Manriquez over at migrantinsider.com. Make sure to check him out, and we'll have to get him on the show here pretty soon. Pablo talking about this ICE app. Yeah, I'm sure you guys probably heard about this. The ICE app that allows folks to point out where ICE is doing stops, doing raids, pulling on their masks, throwing people in unmarked vehicles, potentially sending them down to El Salvador, to the South American gulag, what have you. Of course, you saw a couple days ago that Tim Cook bowed to the president and said that they're not going to allow it anymore. Well, Paulo has a very interesting interview with the guy who created this. He's a journalism professor. And the stated reasoning for this is allegedly Apple considers ICE to be a, quote, protected class. Now, what's a protected class? Legally, that is, mind you, Apple is a private company. It's a for-profit company. It's not the government, but in standard legal terms, that means most minorities, women, people who have been targeted based on sex, gender, religion, other people clearly not in power, certainly not in power enough to have billions of dollars more thrown their way by Congress, and bash in people's doors, bash in people's windows, shoot pepper balls at people's faces, repel, bind up children, naked children. These are all things that have been happening in Chicago, as the president says that he enjoys the smell of napalm in an American city. These are all things that have been happening. Well, Apple, when it took down this app that allows folks to say, hey, here is ICE, be careful. Be careful, folks. Reminder in this dragnet, it's not only immigrants, undocumented, legal, you name it, number of citizens as well. So Apple, when it took it down, said that ICE is a protected class. ICE agents are a protected class. ICE agents are a minority, even though they seem to be targeting minorities in our country. Real quick, tomorrow on the show, Ben Cohen of Ben and Jerry's. Very excited for this. Pre-taped the interview with Ben. We had a blast. You gotta listen for this. Okay, you gotta listen for this one. He tells me how he came up with Cherry Garcia. This is amazing. Okay, guys, you got to check this out. And now we have some very serious discussions about military spending, about the state of our Constitution, whether the country is slipping into a dictatorship. We have some very serious, heavy political discussions, but also the man is an ice cream connoisseur and is somebody who has downed more than a few pints of Cherry Garcia in my time. I was astounded by this in a good way. I'll tell you, it's rare to be astounded in a nice way in the news these days. Coming up on Friday, too, going to have the executive producer of C-SPAN's new show, Michelle Remillard. She's the executive producer of Ceasefire, and this is the opposite of Crossfire. This is bringing two warring sides together to break bread in studio. All right, the first one airs 7 p.m. Eastern time on Friday. Features somebody I've known for a long time, former Vice President Mike Pence, alongside a very combative Democrat, somebody who enjoys cursing almost as much as I do. I would note I don't curse on these live broadcasts, at least not too much. Okay, that messes with the YouTube algorithm. Rahm Emanuel, Rombo, all right, potential 2028 candidate. Super interesting. So if you got questions, drop me a note, Tom at 24site.news. We'll try to get to those. I'm super curious to see how Michelle and the team at C-SPAN, how they do this. All right, guys, let's get to the interview with SV Daté. All right, joining us now, SV Daté. He's the White House correspondent for HuffPost. Sharish, thanks for being here, man.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Hey, so on a scale of 1 to I don't sleep anymore, how bad is this administration compared to the first term?
Well, the first term, he had grown-ups working who understood what should and should not happen within a White House, within a presidency, within an administration, and they kind of kept him within those guardrails, right? I'm talking about people like John Kelly, who started out at Homeland Security, ended up in the White House as the chief of staff. James Mattis, who started out as the defense secretary, got fired. Mark Esper, who replaced him, also got fired. People like that knew that you can't just do whatever gets into his head and on any given day, because it's number one, immoral, and number two, probably illegal. And so, that's gone now, if you've noticed. I mean, Susie Wiles, I don't know what she does, because she's not providing any guardrails to our democracy and even just to the rule of law. So yeah, that's a huge difference. And yeah, if you're sleeping at night, I don't know how you do it, because man, there's some scary stuff going on.
I laugh rather than cry. It really is astounding to me. Just somebody who, been covering this, I guess, for a decade now. Like, mm-hmm. I did not expect this level of animosity after the election last year. The brutality of it has really been stunning.
had like kind of a hope that, okay, the number one policy that Trump wanted from winning that election was not to go to prison. All right. So that was accomplished the moment the votes were counted. He's not going to go to prison because he got away with the coup attempt, and he got away with taking all those documents from Mar-a-Lago. He was able to dismiss those. The thing in Georgia has been derailed for possibly forever, etc. And then he had that victory speech. And I was there for that down in Palm Beach, in West Palm Beach. And I thought, okay, no, it's going to be every bit as bad as we feared. I mean, you remember that he had his kick fighting buddy on there, and he talked about all kinds of weird stuff. And I thought, no, it's it's going to be worse than the first term, a lot worse.
It's stunning to me in this shutdown because the saber rattling that they do, doing an AI mock-up of Blue Oyster Cult, which is attempting to make Russ Vogt look, monstrous, demonic,
right?
What have you. It's like they already did that. Elon already did that ostensibly, whether it's special or, standard, like renaming an existing agency. They already did this.
Mm-hmm.
Like they already fired thousands of people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, their problem with the new version of this, and actually the old version, because they didn't follow the law then, is that you can't fire people under the guise of a government shutdown. That's not a thing. That is what is known as against the law. And even though you don't like the law, judges still do. And eventually you will lose. And maybe you get rid of these people because they don't want to come back and work for you because you're nuts, but you pay them. And so it's a huge cost to the taxpayer. And some of them may come back and stay because, they've got civil service protection. And are you going to try to fire me? Fine. I'm going to be like double my membership in the deep state and do everything I can to undo what you're trying to do. So there's no good that can come from this stuff. And just because Russ Vogt wants to do it does not mean it's a good idea. I mean, think about it. This guy is Mr. Unitary Executive, and he would have Donald Trump as a king if he could. So, for the rest of us, I mean, I get that the Trump White House wants to do it, but for everybody else, including people in Congress who want to win re-election, and that includes Republicans, not such a hot idea. And I think that's why you're seeing them back off.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see the political realities start to set in. Even with this quiet tacking behind the scenes for potential 2028 Republican candidates, big asterisk there on potential, but kind of how they do this dance and, squaring up their own future ambitions with the, as you noted there, the unitary, potentially monarchistic president versus the reality of we are a constitution-based democratic republic.
Yeah.
Laws.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I had at that one time being, in the first few months of 2021, assumed that because there are other Republicans who have ambition, that we'd seen the last of Donald Trump because they would be among those loudest in criticizing him for what he did on January 6th because they had their own idea of who ought to be president in 2024, being them, starting with Mike Pence and working right on down through DeSantis and Haley and Chris, et cetera. And, as you and I both saw, the only ones who even mentioned January 6th and made a big deal out of it were Chris Christie and Asa Hutchinson. And even Pence, who had the strongest, more than anybody, that had the best case to come out of the gate criticizing the hell out of Donald Trump for what he did to our Constitution and nearly did to our republic, and he didn't. It took him a full year before he said, offered the weakest criticism, and it went from there. And then, of course, on that debate stage, raised his hand, and said, "Yeah, if Donald Trump's our nominee, I'll support him." Even though he nearly got me killed, got my family killed. Look, let's bygones be bygones and let's move on. I mean, come on. So that was my feeling in 2024. The same thing should hold true in 2028. These other people want to be president. A lot of them the same people as last time, but add in Rubio, add in Pompeo this time for real. shoot, maybe even Pete Hegseth, and they all
Mm.
have an incentive to say, no, the Constitution says this, 2 terms and you're done, and that's it. And that's the way it's going to be. But will they do that? I mean, we've seen how many emergencies he enacted in the first week. All kinds of crazy emergencies. There's a price emergency. There's a fuel emergency, and I mean, it's nuts. It's literally nuts. The stuff he can do because it's an emergency. And the worst, most dangerous ones, of course, are for national security. And those are the ones that he could claim Antifa is messing with our elections. We can't have elections right now. Antifa has got them rigged. And so we're going to postpone things until we sort this out, until we figure out what the hell is going on, in his words. So we're counting on these other people, again, to be the Republicans in the room saying, no, you will not do that. And I don't know about you. I'm not that hopeful that they're up to it.
It continues to astound me. And I think, I think this is something which people are still catching up to. I was watching this clip of Chuck Schumer finally channeling his innate Brooklynite and cursing. Like, no fucking way.
Yeah.
And how long did it take to get there? I mean, this is the guy who used to dive in front of TV cameras when he was a member of the House delegation.
Right. Yeah.
Like a failure, a failure of, and this is what the Bulwark folks mention this routinely. I know Charlie Sykes has talked about this a lot. A critical failure of a lack of imagination.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. I mean, Amanda Carpenter talks about that a lot. I mean, we failed ourselves heading into the 9/11 attacks. It was a failure of imagination of what people could do without a military. And, people were warning after heading into the election in 2020, this dude is not going to respect the results. He's saying he's not going to respect the results. He's saying that if I lose, it's because they cheated. So why were we surprised? Why were we surprised when January 6th happened, And if we didn't learn from that, then shame on us. And it looks like we haven't, because we're still treating this like a normal administration. When, you mentioned Stephen Miller. I went back and looked at some of the things he was saying in 2017. You remember he got into the briefing room and it actually said that the president cannot be questioned. His right is, his rights are basically, and I forget the exact wording, but his rights are absolute. And, people laughed at him at the time because he was a speechwriter and, what could he possibly do? Well, now he's not just a speechwriter, right? I mean, he's like maybe the most influential person in that inner circle in terms of policy. I mean, he doesn't care about a lot of things. He cares about getting rid of brown people from the country. That's important to him. It's important to him to exert executive power on all kinds of things that he considers to be a threat. So now when Donald Trump is actually listening to him and there's no Jim Mattis to say no, we end up hitting these open boats in the Caribbean full of people that had, that could not have possibly been underway to the United States at the time they were killed. And let's not dance around that word. We killed them under the color of the United States. We as a country killed them. And who knows who they were? I mean, they're claiming they were drug dealers, and maybe they were. But you know what? If we can just kill people because we're accusing them of drug dealers, where does that end? Why do you think it's going to end in just international waters off of Venezuela? It's kind of appalling. I mean, this has never been done. And, there's not nearly as much attention to this as ought to be when Stephen Miller's deciding who lives and who dies off the coast of Venezuela.
Folks, if you're just joining us, I've got SV Daté. He is the longtime White House correspondent for HuffPost, no longer the Huffington Post. It's been a few years now. HuffPost. We're not shortening to HuffPo because that's what's happening over at the WA Post right now.
And look what's happened to them when they gave up their S and their T, huh? Okay.
Don't even know where they are. Somewhere between Newsmax and MSNBC.
Right.
It's and guys, make sure to follow SB. So byline SB Daté, Sharish, but find them online SB Daté, and so one of the reasons I wanted to get you on here because we talked about this a little while ago, about a week ago, is because of the Venezuelan strikes, and you know about this because you used to work down in Florida, you've covered this region before. Get a little bit deeper on that. What is why is it highly unlikely, just as unlikely as some random scraping of tattoos off of Twitter and placed in FBI documents as allegations of Tren de Agua? Why is it unlikely that these boats are quote unquote drug boats?
Well, they may well be drug boats. They may well have been drug boats, right? They could have been taking cocaine to another island. That's entirely possible. And it's possible that ultimately the people who do that for their livelihoods were intending to bring them into the Port of Miami or Port Everglades down in Fort Lauderdale or some other place. That's all possible. But that's not what we're saying when we killed them, right? We're saying that they were en route to USA right now. And I will tell you, I've got plenty of offshore miles. That is not even remotely possible. These things were between, if you look at the video, these things were between 25, 35 feet tops. You can judge by the size of those outboards, right, on their sterns. And those outboards are about 2 feet long along the tops, along the lengthwise edge. So just, base your calculation on that. And a boat like that is not going to make it directly to the United States. It can't. It doesn't have near enough fuel to make it beyond a couple hundred miles tops, especially if they're running those engines full out like they appeared to be doing in those videos. So this claim that they were coming to the U.S. to poison us, well, maybe somewhere, down the line, people were intending for that cargo to come to the United States to sell it to willing American buyers, by the way. They're not coming in putting into children's breakfast cereals, right? People are buying it. And that's a problem we have, 100%. And we should do interdiction if it's dangerous stuff like fentanyl. And guess what? We have been. We have been for decades. That is what Southcom has been doing, is stopping boats that are suspected of carrying drugs. They search the boats. If they find the drugs, they seize it. They arrest the people who are among the crew who are involved with it, and we put them in lockup in Miami, and we try them and convict them if a jury agrees. That's what we do. We're the United States, and now we're changing that apparently and saying, well, you look like a drug dealer, or you were on a route that drug dealers have in the past used. Sorry, dudes, we have to kill you now, and that's what we've done because. Maybe there's intelligence, maybe there's some phone traffic, whatever, that these people were bringing contraband aboard their vessels and heading off to some place. They haven't shared it. You would think that if they had the solid evidence, they might have, because after all, this is not a criminal case at this point, right? These people are dead. And so there's no reason not to release this information, and they haven't. Especially with that first boat on which there were 11 people. Come on. What kind of drug dealer is going to load up the boat with 11 people, right? Think about that. Think about the weight involved here. We're talking about another ton that you've just lost by having humans aboard rather than your whatever it is you're going to sell. So that clearly was not carrying drugs. That was probably smuggling people. And, there are a lot of people trying to leave Venezuela because why? They've got a dictator running the place, okay, a violent dictator. Yes. So maybe that's who we killed. We don't know. They won't tell us. We don't know if they have any evidence other than they were easy pickings for wherever our drone or helicopter or airplane happened to be at the time. We don't know. They won't tell us. And interestingly, when you ask the Pentagon, they refer you to the White House. I've never seen that happen. Never seen that happen when they've undertaken some sort of operation. Often if they want to obfuscate, if they want to delay, they say, oh, no, you got to call Southcom. Oh, no, you got to call the Navy, whatever. Here, say, oh, no, call the White House. Why? Is there an operations room now in the White House where they're droning people? this is ridiculous. And the reason that I can infer is they want nothing to do with it, right? They don't want to talk about it because they probably didn't think it was a good idea. In fact, if you look on Southcom's website and look for press releases, you will see that most of them have to do with stopping vessels and seizing drugs. You don't see a press release about them killing however many people were on this last boat. I think it was 4, or the boat before that, which was 3, and so on.
Oh, interesting. Oh, yes. God, yeah. It astounding. It reminds me so much of the landmark Supreme Court ruling, which, it was hard to comprehend in the moment last summer when it landed just how much of a landmark it is, Trump v. USA, when it established that the president is immune from criminal prosecution for official acts, but not necessarily. Now, this is go down the rabbit hole here. Not necessarily the people who do the orders that he issues.
That is absolutely right. I mean, Richard Nixon was never prosecuted for the massacre in My Lai, right, in South Vietnam, and I believe it was 1968, 67.
Yeah.
Hundreds of villagers were slaughtered, and eventually the leader of that unit was brought up on charges and convicted. That was William Calley, I believe, Lieutenant William Calley, and I believe Nixon ultimately gave him a community sentence, or gave him like community or home detention or some such thing. Either way, think about the position that the president and Stephen Miller apparently have put our military service members and officers in by ordering these strikes. And, there is a public authority exemption for things done under the color of law. But if there is no color of law, if the law says the opposite, in fact, then I wonder how that works. And it may surprise you to find out that in the United States Code, there is actually a prohibition against murder, which is like the premeditated taking of human life. And even in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, murder is also illegal, as it turns out. And so, just to put these folks in that position is beyond irresponsible. And these people have to live with what they've done.
Yeah.
And maybe they've grown up in video games and don't really distinguish the difference. But there are now 21 people who we, the United States of America, have killed on their vessels that were not headed to the U.S., right? And if these chains of smuggling are occurring the way that we think they are, they were never headed to the U.S. They were selling or handing off this stuff to somebody else, assuming, of course, that they're correct and that there were, in fact, have drugs aboard. We don't know that either.
How much, you mentioned an actual dictatorship, Venezuela, and there was a really great piece in the Atlantic a few weeks ago about just how long it takes for the effects of authoritarianism to really hit home. From Chavez to Maduro, it took about 20 years until Venezuela, which, not a wealthy nation by any stretch, but, sizable middle class, professional class, or at least there used to be, who could, where folks were unable to buy shampoo at the grocery store. And that took 20 years for that to happen. I mean, it took 20 years until the shelves were bare, and until they were carrying around I believe it's a peso up in Venezuela. The Venezuelan pesos, almost like wheelbarrows full of Confederate money, 150 years ago, just completely worthless. It strikes me that I feel like we here in the United States don't grasp the reality and the timelines of these things, assuming that, Trump is not trolling, that Trump actually does try to become a dictator by violating the 22nd Amendment. You've seen this stuff before. How do these things happen? And why don't we grasp this in America? Because when I talk with folks, it's it seems so completely foreign. But if you've got folks who live down South America or from South America, what we're living through seems eerily similar to what they've seen before.
Right. As you point out, we've never had something like this. We've had a stable republic with one civil war more than 150 years ago now. And to most people, the idea that it could happen here is just inconceivable. It can't possibly happen here. And it's not like people weren't warning about this guy, right? What he did on January 6th, people say, oh, well, he was just angry about the election. He thought it was stolen. And there are some people who actually believe, his nonsense that it was stolen. Remember that. And there are some of those who will believe anything that he says. So they're kind of beyond hope. If you talk to the experts on this, you will see that in any Western liberal democracy, there are always between 30 and 35 and 40% of the population who are at any given time saying, yeah, you know what? I wish we had a dictator. I wish we had someone who just would get things done, who would just solve problems and, no more of this red tape and nonsense and Congress not doing anything. We just need to get stuff done. And if a dictator can do it, then I would support that. This is something that a plurality of, not a minority of our population already believes. Not just us, other countries as well. Some countries more than others. So you don't need to go that far from 35 or 40% to get up to 48 or 50 or 55% before it's like, yeah, well, there we go. We've just, with the consent of a majority of our population, suspended all our rights. And it's not as if these things end with, like, look at Hungary. Hungary is a great example. It's not like Orban one day came out and said, okay, we're no longer going to have a parliamentary republic here. We're just going to have me in charge of everything. That's not how it happens, right? It happens a little bit at a time. The first thing, you're not allowed to say things on the air or in the media. You might go after judges who oppose you and just load up all the courts with those who agree with you or are loyal to you personally. And is this stuff sounding familiar? I mean, because maybe it should. And that's how it goes until one day there's an emergency. And because of the emergency, some basic things that we're accustomed to, like elections, just don't happen. If you think I'm making this up, go back to the fall of 2020. There was a president, our president, who said, maybe we need to suspend the elections because of COVID. Do you remember that? That was Donald J. Trump. He said that, and it was Mitch McConnell who said, absolutely not. The elections will happen on this date, as it says in the Constitution. That's that. And he wanted to do it when he thought he might lose in 2020. What makes anybody think, especially the context of January 6th, that he won't do something like that again? He's already talked about it. He's had hats made up. He jokes about it, right? I mean, and people, so he's just trolling. He's just having fun. Okay. Was he just having fun back in 2020 too? Was he just having fun when he incited people, to attack the Capitol? It's all fun and games until our democracy's gone.
I mean, there are days where, I wake up and things feel completely normal. Then there are other days where, he's gone and tried to cancel Jimmy Kimmel and succeeded for a number of days until America, pushes back and says, no, First Amendment, I mean, literal bedrock. Okay.
Yeah.
And it seems very jarring by design.
We had the head of the FCC publicly say that, we can do this the easy way, we can do this the hard way, getting rid of Jimmy Kimmel. I'm sorry, under the First Amendment, Jimmy Kimmel can get up there and accuse Donald Trump of pedophilia if he wanted every single damn day. And if Donald Trump wants to sue, that's his right. And Jimmy Kimmel, would have to defend that and be and would face the consequences if he couldn't prove it. But you can't stop people from saying stuff. And that's the First Amendment, and that's exactly what they're trying to do. And he's got the head of the damn FCC going along with it. Think about how dangerous that is, right? I mean, that is like fundamental. If you cannot criticize or are fearful of criticizing because of government action against you, I'm not talking about civil action afterward. I'm talking about what they're doing is shutting you down. That's what they were trying to do. So think about that. And, along those lines, we had the Pentagon now basically trying to get reporters who cover the Pentagon to sign, like, basically comes out to a loyalty oath that you shall not print stuff that unless we say that you can print it. Yeah, no,
it would be comical if it weren't so terrifying. And the only thing, I talk with folks, and, I had Elise Lavette on the show a couple weeks ago, right after the Jimmy Kimmel stuff happened. She wrote a very good piece at her Substack Cosmopolitics about what is the Hungarian playbook? What is it? I love her headline. Her headline was so fucking good. It was called "Late Night with Viktor Orban." Like, that's what we're fucking facing if we get this. We're going to have J.D. Vance as our comedian instead of, I wasn't a huge fan of Jimmy Kimmel before. I've become incredibly appreciative of him.
Right.
So, however corny and, whatever wrote his comedy may be, it's still comedy compared to whatever Vance is putting out there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
But it takes time. It's slow. Right? Like the frog in the boiling water, as they say. And
on the other hand, I've been shocked at how fast they're moving. The same language that they're using to kill people in the Caribbean is what they're describing Antifa here in the United States. So if they can legally kill people outside of the U.S. because they're terrorists, then what's to stop them from killing people who are deemed to be terrorists? And by the way, deemed doesn't require any more than a piece of paper signed by Donald Trump, with Stephen Miller standing next to him in the Oval Office. That's it. I mean, they've deemed Antifa. Who's the president of Antifa? Who's the board? Who are the board members? Oh, right. There aren't any. There is no, but that doesn't matter. They're now terrorists. And so, the precedent is that the president was allowed to kill them. All right, here we are, right? And it's only 9 months in.
You are for folks who don't know, if you're just joining us, I've got SV Daté here. He is a longtime White House correspondent for HuffPost, longtime journalist, radio, print, wire, Associated Press, and I mean, look, dude, like I've been doing this for a minute and I get burnt out by it. How do you do this?
Yeah, I don't know. Some mornings I wake up and I go, no, not this again. And it's absolutely disheartening that, I wrote stories. I wrote a story last summer, pointing out the parallels between the end of the Weimar Republic and what we were starting to see here. And, it's, you're being histrionic and there's no way, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And all right. And the parallels, one by one, we just keep ticking them off, and it's scary as hell. Everything's an emergency. We're deploying troops. Into Chicago, into Portland, right? Because they are having protests against a roundup of people that occasionally is pulling in United States citizens and lawful immigrants into the net, and with pretty much zero due process. You're allowed to have protests. You're allowed to say whatever you want about Donald Trump. And apparently that's making them mad, and therefore we need to deploy the military, which, by the way, is against the law. There's a law saying you cannot use military for domestic purposes, for domestic law enforcement. And they're saying, no, you cannot. Go back and look at what Caroline Leavitt actually said the other day in the briefing when she was asked about this. It said Americans should welcome the president's help in law enforcement. Notice she didn't say that all they're doing is going to defend federal agents and federal property. She said Americans should welcome this. All right. So tell me again that that the goal here isn't to just get people accustomed to having active troops all over the place. I mean, that you talk about third world, that is third world. Nothing gets done unless the president's personal guard approves it. And if you think Pete Hegseth is gonna stand up to that, think again. He's no General Mattis. He's no and he's no Mark Esper. So in fact, he's encouraging and going along with it.
Yeah. Sharice, where do we find your work? How can we support you?
You can support me by supporting HuffPost, which we don't have a billionaire owner, and so we're left to the tender mercies of advertising and of subscriptions. And so HuffPost.com. I'm sure if you go there, you'll be bombarded with like little ads for support HuffPost, etc. You can find my stories there. You can I usually promote them on Twitter and Blue Sky at SV.Daté. And I have my own website for my books, which includes one about Donald Trump's last year in his first term, called A Useful Idiot. And you can find that at Amazon or from my website, which is sv.daté.com.
Beautiful. And Sharice, thank you so much, man. Thanks so much for everything you do.
It's been my pleasure. I hope we don't end up in the gulag over this.
God. Big thanks again to Sharice for that. Like I'll tell you guys, that's why I do this. Having people who know what's going on. We've been in the trenches for years. Yes. Is it crazy? Is it sane? Absolutely. But there are things that we can do about it. Stay grounded, keep our wits about us, keep going. All right. Other folks have done this before us. We keep doing it ourselves. Just a little programming note before I head out. I will not be live tomorrow, Thursday, October 9th, because I'll be down at the Marcom Mid-Atlantic Summit. It's a marketing and communication summit down in Arlington, Virginia. Guys, if you're here in the DMV, right in suburban Washington, stop by. Going to be having a lot of fun there. We're talking on a panel on the role of independent journalists. I'll be on there with Chris Cillizza, Kevin Cirilli, Liz Nelson, Charlie Burney, and moderated by the great Sarashi Rai from the Hill newspaper. So very much looking forward to that. Find me there if you're in town, interested in learning more. Do support independent journalism, guys. We need you. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much to our sponsors, Beth Solomon, Manoj Paulson, project managed by Move.com. Big thanks to all you guys for watching every day, because you know what? We build these things little by little. You can't cancel a movement, all right? No matter how many pencil neck bureaucrats you throw at us. Yes, I'm referring to the FCC. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Catch us every day at noon here, YouTube, Substack, and always catch the encore at Political Voices Network, 8 p.m. Eastern, every night. right, guys, we'll see you. Cheers.